the Bambu Lab A1, P1P, P1S, and X1 Carbon. Out of these 4 Bambu Lab machines, which 3D printer is the best one for you? Let's talk about it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Frank, and today I want to go over all 4 Bambu Lab printers, the price points, the pros, the cons, and my personal experience with these, and at the end, which one do I recommend to you? Now, before we get started, you're probably gonna notice immediately that I do not have the A1 Mini. It is literally just the A1, but smaller. So 99% of the stuff I say in regards to the A1 can be applied to the Mini, just really, really small. So if you do land on wanting to get the A1 or A1 Mini, just get the A1. It's bigger, it's better. It's just bigger. Now, before we get started, obviously this is all opinion-based. This is my personal experience with these machines, and I've been putting them to use for quite a while now. I'm using machines like this to print large cosplay and props. So if that's what you're looking to get into, our opinions are gonna align pretty good on this. But even if this isn't what you're looking to get into specifically, I'm sure this video will help you land and decide on which printer to get. Now, before we continue, I do wanna get this out of the way. This video is not sponsored by Bambu Lab. They have not asked me to make this video. They have not put any obligation on me to make this video. However, they have sent me a lot of machines. That does not mean I will withhold any opinion, good or bad. Trust me, ask Prusa or Elegoo. So if you don't like that I'm sent machines to review or test or make videos about, you might want to look into sunk cost fallacy and come back and watch my video again anyway. I'm making this video because I want to, and hiding amongst these 4 printers is my #1 recommendation for anybody looking to get started into 3D printing. So let's get there. So before we start talking about the individual printers, let's talk about all the printers as a whole and what they have in common. Well, aside from price point, obviously. The A1 currently sits at $339, the P1P is at $499, the P1S is at $599, and the X1 Carbon is at $1199. It's the biggest differences right now. They all cost different amounts of money. They all print in the exact same size. 256 by 256 by 256 millimeters. I wanted to print a cube out to show the actual dimensions, but you get the gist of it. You can actually see the helmet in here. That's the build size you get on these machines. All 4 of them exactly the same. They all have a camera. They all have some type of camera monitoring system so you can watch the prints and even record time-lapse. The A1, P1P, and P1S have a lower resolution camera, but it still gets the job done. And the X1 Carbon has a little bit of a nicer camera, so the time-lapses come out a lot smoother. They all include auto self-leveling, easy turnkey setup. You literally take them out of the box, go through the little setup sequence, and you're off to printing. The only thing is with the A1, there is a little bit of assembly required. It's like 4 bolts, and it's some of the easiest instructions I've ever seen. It won't take you any extra time to get this set up compared to the others. All 4 of them have all metal hot ends, and if you know what that means, it's just the whole hot end is solid metal, helps with heating and cooling. They all come with 0.4 millimeter nozzles. These are stainless steel. The A1, P1P, and P1S have stainless steel nozzles, where the X1 Carbon has a hardened steel nozzle for better materials, which we'll talk about later. With that, all 4 printers can get up to 300 degrees Celsius in temperature. Again, that's that nice all metal hot end feature. They all can print up to 500 millimeters a second, and we're gonna talk about why the A1 can't really do that. I mean, it can, but you're never gonna really want to, but we'll get to that later. And at a very minimum, all 4 of them can print PLA, PETG, TPU, and PVA. And all 4 of them have remote control printing. You can use the Bambu Handy app or Bambu Studios on your computer. You can remote monitor, print, all of that, all Wi-Fi connectivity, and it's great. So that's everything these machines have in common. Let's start talking about the individual things. First up, the A1. This is the Bambu Lab A1. It is Bambu Lab's cheapest 3D printer, aside from the Mini, that can print the same size as all the other machines. It is also a bed slinger, and if you don't know what a bed slinger is, it means the bed moves back and forth as opposed to the other machines where the tool head spins around and the print gets printed as the bed lowers. We'll talk about those later. Now, the immediate pros of this machine are it's cheap. It has the same build size as the other machines, but it's a lot cheaper. $339, not too bad at all. And aside from the X1 Carbon at the top end of the list, this has a very good user interface on the touchscreen. Very easy to follow, and it's just laid out really nicely. As stated before, it has the stainless steel nozzle. It can print PLA, PETG, TPU, and PVA, and it's just an easy machine to set up, and it looks pretty nice. Now, unlike the other Bambu machines, the A1 and the A1 Mini use the AMS light system. And if you're not familiar with the AMS system, it means it's a multi-material system. You can have 4 rolls of filament printing at the same time. That's actually what the setup I have on this. That's why I have 4 Bowden tubes instead of 1, but you don't need to get this system. This doesn't make the printer better or make it print better. It just gives you the option of multi-materials or multi-colors. So this doesn't affect print quality per se, but know that you can add on the AMS Lite system to the A1, as opposed to the normal AMS system, which goes on all the other machines. So if at any point you click any of the links down below for these machines, make sure you're looking at the two options between the A1 combo or the P1, P1S combos. The price will jump up, obviously, if you're including the AMSs, so just keep an eye on that. Now, I talked about the pros of this machine. What are the cons? Well, first off, it's a bed slinger, and this used to be not really a problem, but when you're competing against other machines like the P1 series or the X1 series that are Core XY, where again, that nozzle head moves around and the bed doesn't, as this printer moves forward and back, it's just naturally going to drop the quality just a little bit. As that print swaying back and forth, especially printing at high speeds, you're gonna start to get a little bit of banding, or you're gonna get a little bit of a quality drop, or you're gonna have to slow the print down. So though it can print up to 500 millimeters a second, on something like a bed slinger where you're getting that inertia and that force getting moved back and forth, you are gonna wanna slow it down just a little bit. And actually programs like Bambu Slicer or Orca Slicer do slow it down naturally. They don't put it at the same speeds as the other machines just because of the nature of the machine. Now, while this isn't necessarily an actual con, it's just something to consider if you're trying to get the maximum quality out of these machines. Aside from that, really good. Now, the A1 is the machine I've actually spent the least amount of time with, though I've gotten plenty of prints off of it. This thing was immediately put to work doing things like Flexi Rexis for my Etsy shop, or even the multicolored PAL spheres I was selling for a little while. And the print quality on them was really, really good. Definitely leagues ahead of any of the other bed slingers I was using. And it was actually keeping up, if not surpassing, things like the K1 Maxes and the normal K1s from Creality. And it handled this Dr. Doom mask really well, but we're gonna talk about this later. Okay, next up is the Bambu Lab P1P. Now, immediately you're gonna notice mine looks a little different than this picture. The P1P is the bare bones frame platform of the P1S and X1 Carbon. I have just gone and printed this really cool enclosure for it that makes it look like a companion cube from Portal. I just did it in Iron Man colors because, well, you know. This is just printed plastic. There are tons of designs and enclosure printers, or print enclosures. Enclosures you can print for this machine. I didn't feel like stripping it down, but hey, here's a really cool fancy picture of it. It's just a frame. I like mine more. Currently sitting at $499, this thing is an absolute steal of a printer. It is just a open air 3D printer, really easy to set up. You literally take it out of the box and plug in a couple things and boom, you're off to the races. Has the same build volume as all the other machines, 256 by 256 by 256. Can print things like PLA, TPU, PTG, PVA, you know, the standard stuff. Now, this is the first Core XY in the lineup. And like I was saying before, the print head here moves all around as the bed itself raises and lowers. That is a Core XY machine compared to the bed slinger of the A1. What this means is that print isn't gonna sway back and forth. It's just gonna lower down. Any vibration you're gonna get is from this printer losing its mind while it prints at 500 millimeters a second, and yeah, it can do it. So as long as it's not on a really wobbly table like this, like don't use a fold-up table to have your printers on, as long as it's on a stable platform, it can go fast. It's gotta go fast. Now, this machine can print better materials, PC, PAs, ABS, ASAs, but you have to add an actual enclosure to it. No, this really light open air enclosure for decoration isn't what I mean. You can actually go and buy an enclosure on Bambu's website to basically upgrade this from a P1P to a P1S. Or you just buy the P1S, but we're not there yet. Now, the two cons I have for this machine are, one, it doesn't have an enclosure, so it's just this open air, bare bones machine. So if you are looking to start printing stuff that needs an enclosure, like ABSs or PCs or something, you are gonna need to get some type of enclosure. Unfortunately, the price jump from buying the enclosure and the P1P to just getting the P1S with it it's different. It is cheaper just to get the P1S, and we're gonna talk about that next. The other thing is, this screen, it's over here, this thing. I am not a fan of this screen. It is a downgrade from the A1. The A1 came after this, so it's not really a downgrade per se, but it's really kind of janky. It's a lot easier to use the Bambu Handy app. It's just a very, very, very basic little screen with some arrows and not a lot of information. That's probably my only gripe with it. It doesn't degrade the quality of the prints. It doesn't make the printer any worse. It just makes it a little annoying to use sometimes. But if you're using remote print systems like Orca or Bambu or your phone, you're never really even gonna need to use the screen anyway. But with all of that said, if you're just looking for probably the best bare bones machine to print things only like PLA or PETG, this is it. There's nothing you'll want for here. It has the camera, it has the light, it has the print speed, has the nozzle, has the easy setup, and you can expand it with an AMS system eventually if you have the enclosure for the top. That's totally up to you. Well, I guess you don't need the enclosure for the AMS, you just need a way to sit it up top. I think you could print an adapter. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about the P1S. The Bambu Lab P1S. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that this is it. This is my favorite current 3D printer I recommend to absolutely anybody. Unless you want to start printing really crazy exotic materials, and we'll talk about that with the X1 Carbon, this is it. It has everything that the Bambu P1P had, the nozzle, the speed, the Core XY features, the build plate, the screen I'm not the biggest fan of, but now you get the enclosure. This sits at $599 for $600, which just does sound worse than $599. Damn, they're right. This is it. This is, in my opinion, the ultimate 3D printer right now. It's like you just went to Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond and bought a microwave. Like, here it is. Except instead of using microwaves to cook food, you print stuff. So you got a little glass enclosure on the top. Man, that is dirty. Brother, how? And the insides are the same as the P1P. If I was to take the panels off, it's the same printer. But because it comes with the enclosure already built on, you don't need to do any assembly, any setup, it's just ready to go. You have a full enclosed system, which means aside from the PLAs and PETGs, you can now out of box print the PCs and PAs and ABSs and ASAs right there, ready to go. I actually had 4 of these machines running round the clock for about 3 weeks to print this giant Megatron Transformers costume. Without these 4 P1Ss and the 4 X1 Carbons I had, I would not have been able to complete that project in time. This video is coming out after that, and man, do I hope that went well. This entire costume, every part of it was printed between the P1Ss and the X1 Carbons. And it came out so cool. More on that later. Now, just like the P1P, it also supports the AMS system. You can just sit it on top with the glass on top and then it plugs in so you can print multi-materials or multi-color prints. That's great. If this is where you want to stop looking for your first 3D printer or going through the different Bambus, this would be it. If you're just looking to get into the hobby, you want to buy a printer, you have the $600 to spend on a machine that you do not need to fuss with. Literally out of box, ready to go. And everything that I've talked about you printing seems like it's in your wheelhouse, the PLAs, PTGs, ABSs. This is it. You don't have to watch any farther, you just go and get this printer and you will never be happier. But if you are looking for more advanced printing options, if you are looking for a better camera and AI monitoring and first layer detection and all that type of stuff, then we're gonna talk about the X1 Carbon in a minute. But the P1S, man, I love this machine, and until something better comes out, this is the one I'm gonna recommend. Just crushing that print quality. Like, come on. But with all that said, let's move on to the granddaddy, the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon. Bambu Lab's flagship machine that really, if you Google search best 3D printer on the market, the X1 Carbon comes up more often than really anything else right now. So let's take a look. The Bambu Lab X1 Carbon. Yes, to those of you that don't immediately know what you're looking at, it looks almost identical to the P1S. Pretty sure it's the exact same enclosure system. Nope, this is metal, I lied. You now have a touchscreen, probably the best touchscreen user interface on any of the machines. You have a little bit of a different button layout kind of situation going on. Pretty much the exact same on the inside, except now for that $1,199 at $1,200, double the price of the P1S. What else are you getting on this? Well, instead of the stainless steel nozzle, you're now getting a hardened steel nozzle, which means you can now start printing harder materials, nylon film materials, carbon fiber materials, that type of stuff. You can print those materials without destroying and ravaging the nozzle and wearing it down. It has that better camera for actually recording your print and doing time lapses, but it also has an AI detection system. It has AI running in the machine to look for things like print failures, spaghetti detectors. It actually reads your first layer with LiDAR to see if your print's coming out nice and smooth. It knows what that first layer is supposed to look like because it has the shape and the G-code path, and it's gonna compare that with a scan to see, hey, did the print actually stick or is it a complete mess? And it'll pause the print until you can like either cancel the print or keep going. The touchscreen user interface is super easy to use, and it's all packaged up and bundled in this nice machine. The same as the P1P and P1S, it is turnkey, out of box, ready to go. It's gonna take you longer to unbox it and like get all the cardboard and foam out of it than it is to actually like set up the machine. It's pretty wild nowadays. Now, the cons with this machine, and some of you Bambu fans might already be like, there are no cons. I don't care. Yes, there is. First off, it's overkill for 99% of the hobbyists out there just printing stuff for around the house, their Etsy shops. If you're printing props and cosplay, I can get 2 P1Ss for the price of an X1 Carbon. Now, you have to ask yourself, is it worth having the AI monitoring and the LiDAR and the camera and the touchscreen? Are these things worth it? The hardened steel nozzle as opposed to the stainless steel nozzle? Are these little upgrades worth the $600 jump for this machine? Now, like I was talking about with that Transformers cosplay before, I was running 4 X1 Carbons and 4 P1Ss all at the same time, printing multiple parts, silks, just pumping stuff out, and the P1Ss performed just as good as the X1 Carbon. If anything, they performed just a little bit better because of the AI camera and the spaghetti detector. Sometimes they act up. And this is my personal experience with them. At least once or twice on each of the machines, brand new out of box, sometimes the AI would detect that first layer and think there was a problem, but there actually wasn't. So it would pause the print. Now, while this is good, if it happens again and again, it does start to get just a little bit annoying, and it's like, hey, I just want the print to work. Where the P1Ss, I didn't have any failures through that Megatron print. The first layer went down after the leveling, and I was off to the races. Where the AI just got a little bit with the X1 Carbons a few times, nowhere near as bad as it got with the FL Sun S1. That's a whole video for another time, don't worry about it, but it was a little annoying. However, with that said, that ease of mind, that comfort in knowing that you have a better camera, you have that spaghetti detector, that first layer detector, you have all of that in this machine, maybe it is worth upgrading to the X1 Carbon over the P1S. This way you just have it, you know it's sitting there, and it's just gonna pump prints out nonstop, and it just might be worth it for you. Personally, if I was getting into 3D printing and doing stuff like I'm already doing, I would go with the P1S. I'd go with 2 P1Ss over the X1 Carbon pretty much 9 times out of 10. Now, with all of that out of the way, we've talked about the A1 all the way up to the X1. Let's take a look at those Dr. Doom prints to see which one actually printed the best, or did they all kind of print at the same quality from a $339 printer to a $1,200 printer. Let's find out. Okay, I'm kneeling down for this. Here are the 4 printed Dr. Doom masks, all printed with maximum quality settings, all printed with the same wall settings and infill. I just did it to optimize the print quality. I used some tree supports, I positioned them all the same. I didn't adjust speeds. Actually, this is everything I adjusted right here on the screen, and I sliced them. Actually, they all used exactly the same amount of filament, 212 grams. The X1 Carbon estimated 213, and I think it's because it does that flow dynamic calibration at the beginning, but they all use the same amount of filament. I was actually able to get all 4 of these printed with less than 1 roll of filament, which is kind of cool. Speaking of filament, I made sure to level the playing field. I used 4 brand new unopened spools of Bambu's silk silver PLA. 4 printers, 4 spools, fresh, hit print, go. And these 3 actually printed in the nearly exactly same amount of time. The X1 Carbon took 19 hours and 44 minutes, while the P1S and the P1P took 19 hours and 43 and 19 hours and 50 minutes. As I was talking about before, since the A1 is a bed slinger and Orca Slicer and Bambu Slicer know that, it does dull down the print speed just a little bit, and that actually took 27 hours and 16 minutes to print the same Dr. Doom mask. So it added 8 hours, but if the quality came out the same, that's not bad. Now, I've been waiting to take these off the build plate for like 2 weeks, so let's go ahead and just break off some supports and look at the actual quality that these came out. Okay, the prints are off, and let's work backwards from the X1 Carbon, the most expensive printer, all the way down to the A1. And this came out, I mean, pretty much how you'd expect. A little bit of banding right there. You can see it in the reflection, and it almost looks like some zits right here. But I mean, at first glance, it handled this silk beautifully. And I want to reiterate, this is just turnkey out of box stock settings. I only adjusted like the supports and I maxed out the quality. I didn't dial in the filament. I didn't do anything weird or crazy. And like, that's a really nice Dr. Doom mask. The top layering got a little wonky, but support removal was really clean. And actually, it's like one of those illusions. Is it like facing you or facing away? But yeah, not bad. Next up, the P1S, and honestly, it came out just as good as the X1 Carbon. It looked like there was a little bit of a weird, I don't know, not so much a clog, but almost a skipped layer or something going on there, but it didn't happen on the other side. The same kind of banding and zits that are on the X1s, but again, from the front, support removal was absolutely great. It looks really good. Obviously, silks and shiny filaments are gonna show every single layer line because it's just throwing that light back at you. But if I was to hold both of these up and ask you which one came off the X1 Carbon and the P1S, there's no way you could tell me. This is the one off the P1P, and my P1P probably has more mileage on it than any of these printers, and I think it is starting to be due for a tune-up. It definitely has more banding than any of the others. That's more noticeable from the front, but still, again, not bad. The silk came out really good. Actually, now that I'm looking at it in the camera, I'm wondering, did it actually is the color just a little different? It looks pretty much the same. Decently the same quality, same zits. Honestly, they all seem to have the same issues in the same spots, which just tells me that it's G-code and pathing and speed. If I had slowed it down a little bit, it might have came out better, or if I had just positioned it differently, who knows, but yeah, nice. And finally, the A1. Now, something weird happened here, and I'm not sure why. You can see the discoloration spots all over the mask where it's rough. It's not shiny at all. And it happened around the mouth, it happened there. I don't actually know why it did this. And this is not a good representation of the A1 because I've printed silks on the A1 before. I've printed plenty of PAL spheres, these ones specifically from the A1, and they came out fine with the color change. So I'm actually not sure why Bambu brand filament and Bambu Studio, knowing it's Bambu filament, the exact same settings as all the other machines, I really am kind of stumped on why it did this. So in terms of quality and layer adhesion and the actual detail, it came out great, but just something odd happened to the filament while it was printing. Maybe it was running too hot or something. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I wish this had come out better, but even from a distance, I don't know, it almost looks like weathering. Still not bad. Now, in terms of handling the details, the A1 and the X1, they both more or less nailed it. Aside from the discoloration on the A1, there isn't much of a difference in terms of the attention to detail and the quality. The supports also came off super easy on both of them, but obviously the A1s just took a little bit more time. Now, in terms of the P1P to the X1 Carbon, over a $600 price difference, they really look the same. I mean, you can sit here and nitpick, but they really don't look that different. So with all of that out of the way now, some closing and final thoughts. If you guys are looking just to get into the hobby and you've been looking at the Bambu machines, I see nothing wrong with the A1. It's a good bed slinger. You are gonna have just a little bit of a slower print speed, and it just doesn't bolster the higher speeds and the exact precise quality as these other three behemoths. The weird filament thing, that's not a reflection of the printer. Again, I'm gonna look into why it did that, but it's been printing other silks fine. I don't know, sometimes a fluke happens, I might have to adjust something up or down, but it's a fantastic printer. If you want the absolute bare bones, bottom, entry level, best printer, I know that probably sounds confusing, but the $500 P1P, this thing's incredible. I've loved this thing ever since they fixed the firmware, but this was like 2 years ago. Don't worry about it, it works great now, I promise. But if you're looking for my absolute #1 recommendation, you are looking at all the Bambus, you're looking for your first 3D printer, you want a machine that is going to come out of the box, have most of everything that you're gonna need, the P1S, you absolutely cannot beat what you get for the $599. I love this machine. I love having 4 of them, and I've been putting them all to absolute work. And everybody I've recommended to get this machine has been just as happy with it. And if you are looking into more of the exotic materials, the carbon fibers, the nylons, you want that AI reliability, you want that LiDAR, you want that touchscreen, the X1 Carbon is right here, but I do personally think it's overkill for probably about 99% of the people looking to get into this hobby. Just stick with the P1S, you're gonna be more than happy with it. And then stop falling. And if you do eventually want a second 3D printer, because spoiler alert, everybody does, maybe then you save up for the X1 Carbon and you're gonna see that they print pretty much the same, but this one just has a little bit more features. I do really hope this video helped you decide when narrowing down and shopping for a Bambu machine. I have all of these machines linked down below. They are affiliate links. You don't need to use the affiliate links, but you can still navigate to the website, see the price, see that, whatever. But it does help support the channel. It helps me to continue to make videos like this and just all the content I put out there. Speaking Speaking of content, if you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing to the channel. This way you can stay up to date to all the videos I have coming out. There's a lot more planned for Bambu machines and other types of reviews and product overviews and all of that fun stuff, and that big Transformers Megatron costume I was talking about. I am planning a long form video where I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about how I was using the P1S and the X1 to absolutely pump that costume out in like 2 weeks. And finally, if you want to yell at me down in the comments, please, I encourage it. Or if you have any comments, questions, or concerns and you want to ask me something, leave some comments down below. I read all of them and I will do my best to respond to as many as possible. But that's going to be a wrap for this video, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. You have a good day.
You shall feel the wrath of doom.